Third down and 20.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the 3rd and 20 Dynasty Podcast. We're on episode 24, and I hate to say it, but we're in the middle of no man's land. The Super Bowl's gone. We're far away from the draft. We're far away from, the season starting, but we do still have a bunch of stuff to talk to you guys about. And you know what? Rather than asking how everyone's doing, we're just going to jump right into it because we have the rumor mill starting. Carson Wentz, could he be ending up on the Bears? Deshaun Watson, is he going to the Panthers? No one knows exactly what's going to happen yet, but I want to get the breakdown from everyone. So let's start off with Carson Wentz. Lounis, you're a Carson Wentz fan. What do you think about him potentially going to the Bears? What kind of compensation are you looking for the Eagles to get? Do you think, Carson Wentz could potentially help the Bears? Do you think whatever the Eagles get will help them? What are your thoughts?
So I definitely think, well, first off the start, I think the Colts are like the more ideally landing spot if you are a Wentz owner. But as for Chicago, it depends because he's going to run into a lot of the same problems that he had in Philadelphia with if Allen Robinson's not there anymore, the receiving targets he has, Mooney, Cole Kmet, I do think Mooney's really good though. I think Cole Kmet's value does go up because of how much Wentz favors tight ends. But I definitely think, though, it'll still be better than his last season in Philadelphia because I think their O-line next year will be better than the Eagles' injured O-line last season. I think in terms of compensation, I think the Eagles are holding out for the first-round pick. I think that's what they're ultimately trying to do because I think they think that they kind of have the leverage in this situation with the Colts and the Bears because the Colts don't. I know Jake's kind of doubtful. What's the Colts' backup plan if Wentz doesn't work? Brissett?
Sure. I mean, the thing here is, the Eagles want. We've seen this thrown out there, but the Eagles want a Stafford-esque package.
They're not
for
going to
Carson Wentz, when in reality he's the Goff. He's the guy that they have to attach picks to get rid of because of this contract on his end, and I don't think the Eagles realize that.
I don't think GMs fully view it like that because we know already that on the table there's 2 seconds. That's been confirmed to be on the table from the Colts for Wentz. I also, by the way, I do think Ertz is ultimately going to be attached if he does get traded to the Colts. I just think they're holding out because I think their mentality is neither of these teams really are a high enough draft pick to be able to take one of those top QBs besides praying that Mac Jones gets to them. And the free agent QB market, unless you can really get Prescott or Watson, which I don't think either of those teams are really in the running for either one of those two. The Texans aren't giving Watson to the Colts. What's the backup plan? I guess you can maybe say Sam Darnold, but
I think the Colts could be in the running for Dak if he enters free agency. I mean, they got like $80 million in cap room. Why wouldn't they be in the running for him?
Well, no, I think if he did hit the free agent market, they would be. I think the report came out that Dallas is going to franchise tag him this year. So do you want to wait one season?
I think he's going to stay on Dallas. Do we really think that Dak is leaving Dallas?
I
don't
think it's
not this offseason. I think next offseason is where he might. And go ahead, JT.
It's definitely not a 0% chance that Dak doesn't leave Dallas. My question, though, kind of pivoting back to the Wentz talk, is I saw reports maybe yesterday about there's potential that the Bears could franchise tag Allen Robinson and send him off in a deal. Do you think that is a possibility with the Eagles? Maybe, they get Allen Robinson and a little bit of other compensation. And then, instead of drafting the Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith at 3, they might go tackle at 3. And they just automatically really shore up their offense.
That's true. I would give it a higher chance if the Eagles weren't in cap hell right now. Because that franchise tag...
You'd have to give him $20 million or something like that, right?
That franchise tag would be around, I think, 15 or 16 mil for Allen Robinson. And I don't think the Eagles are already well over the cap, and they're eating more dead cap with Wentz. So true. I don't know. I don't know if that'd be. I think everything's I think they know they need to do. I don't know if it's a full rebuild. if not a rebuild, then a retool. But I think they're just trying to get picks badly.
All right. So to sum up Wentz, and then we'll move on to Watson. All four of you, give me, including myself. Where do you think Wentz ends up? We'll start with Lounis.
My prediction on Wentz is he goes to the Bears for that 21st pick.
Jake?
I'm gonna say Colts. I think they're gonna, top that offer by a little bit, just because, like you said, they don't really have any options.
Frank?
Man, I'm really torn because I think it makes more sense for the Colts, but I'm gonna say Bears just because Pace and Nagy they're fighting for their job, and I think that they're gonna want to do it with a quarterback.
That's another good point. They're in desperation mode. If they don't make it work this year, they could both be fired.
Yeah.
I guess my question to you guys. Yeah, my question to you guys is, which is the better fantasy option for Wentz to end up? Is it the Bears or is it the Colts?
For Wentz's sake, it's the Colts. Because then he'll have an extremely good O-line, which I think he needs to kind of get back to his old form.
Yeah, I just don't think I could, unless you can guarantee me Allen Robinson is staying, which I don't even think, I think it's more likely than not that he's leaving. I think you gotta agree it's the Colts. They've just got a way better offense in general. As far as teams are concerned, I think the Colts might be better off just trying someone else than Carson Wentz. For the Bears, I don't really know who else they could go out and get either. What I'm trying to say is I think the Bears would be better off if Carson Wentz was their starter over, Trubisky and Foles or whatnot. And I don't really see them going out and getting anyone else with the Colts. I think I know we said they don't have any other options, but I really do think they can actually get someone that would end up being better than Wentz on the team. Whether that's, a Sam Darnold type or they somehow trade up and get someone, a rookie quarterback. I don't think Easton's the answer. Who knows? Maybe they like Jimmy G. I don't think Wentz is who I want on the Colts. All right. That sums up Carson Wentz. The only other guy that we've got the rumors on that we're going to talk about, Deshaun Watson. He's been wanting to leave the Texans for a while now. We've kind of covered it a little bit already. There was rumors out. It was a shaky report, but it was something interesting. The Panthers would potentially give up their first along with Christian McCaffrey to get Deshaun Watson. I don't think that's actually, what's happening, but it's something that, kind of tickled everyone's fantasy brain and dynasty brain or whatnot. Deshaun Watson on the Panthers would be amazing. Where do you guys think Deshaun Watson's going to end up? Do you even think he leaves the Texans? They're very committed to saying, he's staying here. So for this one, I think we'll start with Frank.
Like in the mock draft that me and Steed released on the 3rd and 20 podcast, I still think that the Jets makes the most sense for Deshaun Watson. For a couple of reasons. Obviously, they have that plethora of draft capital at their disposal to beat out all the other teams, but at the same time, they have a player named Sam Darnold that I think that you can get at minimum a late second-round pick to refill. Let's say you have to give up both of your first-round picks and a second round and future picks. You can then trade away Sam Darnold for a second and then refill to actually have a draft class. You get the New York on your side. If you do that, you finally give that team some life that they haven't had since Rex Ryan. So I think that the Jets are still a team that really makes a lot of sense for Deshaun Watson.
Jake, what do you think about that?
I mean, I agree with what Frank's saying. The Jets just have so much, draft capital thanks to that Jamal Adams trade last offseason. They have a Darnold, which I think they could even potentially send back to Houston. So Houston's not, without a quarterback here. I just think there's a lot of ways the Jets could play this. Another option, I mean, I would like to see this Panthers thing happen just because, like you said, it just tickles everyone's dynasty fancy here. in terms of, DJ Moore gets a quarterback, Robbie Anderson gets a quarterback. Obviously, in this report, it had Christian McCaffrey going back to Houston, which 2 off seasons in a row, the Texans trading their best player for a running back. I don't know how it worked the first time.
It would be such a Houston move. It doesn't even fit their timeline at all. They're going to be rebuilding during McCaffrey's prime.
Yeah, Watson going to Carolina would be probably the best spot out of all the places rumored so far.
I mean, I think Miami might be the best spot in terms of just players and coaching staff around them. I really like the Dolphins there, with the high pick that they have from the Texans that they could send back to them. They have their own pick at 18 that they could use on a wide receiver, maybe potentially, a Jalen Waddle type of receiver if he falls that far. I just think the Dolphins are a great spot as well, but overall, I love these type of rumors. Obviously, I don't think this is what's going to happen. It's just rumor mill central, as JT said. It's the middle of nowhere. We're in no man's land, and all the NFL reporters are just throwing things out there to get some clicks. But hey, I love it. I love the thought of it.
Now, all right, we could go in a couple directions. So first, I think I'll just ask Lounis real quick. You're a Deshaun Watson and CMC owner in our league.
Yes.
What do you think that trade would have? Like, what kind of impact would that have on your fantasy team?
So I think it helps Watson a ton. I love Matt Rule and his coaching staff. He'd be back with elite receivers. DJ Moore is an elite receiver. I don't know. I don't think they're bringing back Curtis Samuel. They might. But then Robbie Anderson is another really good receiver. So I think it helps Watson a lot. I think even though Miami is a very good landing spot, I think I lean Carolina more as being a slightly better one because of the weapons they have. As for McCaffrey, my initial thought was, oh no. Now it's just kind of slightly no. I think it wouldn't be as good. But at the same time, I think they would just kind of force feed him a ridiculous amount. Like, I think he would get close to 25, 30 touches just because... especially if they lose Will Fuller in free agency, which I don't know if Will Fuller would want to re-sign if Deshaun Watson's not there. Who do they have? Randall Cobb, a washed-up David Johnson.
Brandon Cooks.
I forgot. Brandon Cooks is still there, so he'd be like the main receiving target. I forgot about him. But I think it would hurt McCaffrey, but not like full panic. But I definitely think it helps Watson a lot.
Now, let me run a scenario by you guys that I feel like it's not really getting talked about a whole lot. So, the Texans GM is, or I don't even know what his technical position is, but Nick Caserio came from the Patriots to the Texans, right? And he was the director of player personnel for the Patriots. One of the players that the Patriots drafted a few years ago was Jimmy Garoppolo. Do you think there's any possibility that the San Fran trades Jimmy G plus their first plus something else and ends up getting Deshaun from the Texans? Because I like that, and I don't own anyone, but I think Deshaun Watson on the 49ers with Shanahan would be a great combo. Do you guys think there's any potential that happens?
I think there's a small potential. I've seen that they're linked to him. Obviously not as much as the Jets or the Dolphins or any of these other teams that we've talked about. But I've seen the rumor thrown around, and I think the Nick Caserio to Jimmy G connection there is something that is probably legit. He was on the Patriots personnel front office when they drafted him and eventually traded him to San Fran for a first round pick. I don't think they would be all opposed as if he was what had to be the Deshaun Watson successor there.
I think that would be by far the best landing spot. I think it's interesting. I hadn't because you bring up a good point. The Patriots were in love with Jimmy G and ready to make him the franchise quarterback. So I think that'd be a very interesting scenario. I do think that if that's on the table, then that's obviously Watson's best landing spot. Because if Shanahan can make Nick Mullins when he starts a good fantasy quarterback, like Nick Mullins would put up points whenever he started. Imagine Deshaun Watson.
There's a stretch of time where he was only behind Andrew Luck and Patrick Mahomes for most passing yards through X amount of career starts. It was like 9 career starts.
Yeah, that was the craziest stat.
Quick stat correction.
I don't think it's a good fit, though.
You don't think that'd be a good fit?
Here's why. Because I've went back and the other day and I was just looking through a Mike Shanahan leaked playbook on the Broncos and just watching this 49ers offense for a while. The main reason I don't like it is because I don't think the 49ers offense really fits Deshaun Watson's skill set. Deshaun Watson is a guy that he's greedy. He wants to hold on to the football. He wants to stretch the field. And the 49ers offense is almost the exact opposite. It's a very timing offense, right? The footwork of the quarterback is timed to the routes of the receivers. We get the ball out. We run the ball a whole lot. I think that Shanahan is good enough that he'd be able to tweak his system around Deshaun, but if I'm going to choose a landing spot, I think it's the best. I'm going to go with Matt Rule and the Carolina Panthers, a guy that has been in the college game and had a ton of success, a guy that has a quarterback with a similar but way less skill set in Teddy Bridgewater, and we saw they were in a ton of one-score games, and just imagine what he could do if he gets someone like Deshaun Watson, who's just 10 times better than Teddy Bridgewater, so I don't think that's a great fit, and I think the Niners are a lot higher on Jimmy G than the public is.
That's fair. I will say with the quick hitting short passes, while I do think that Shanahan's offense, I think also part of it is the fact that he's never really had an elite tier talent quarterback to where I think the offense has been designed to make it a lot easier on them.
He had Matt Ryan win an MVP.
Yeah, Matt Ryan won an MVP with him.
Oh, I forgot.
And I think that's the type of quarterback that he wants because Matt Ryan really fit his system well. And I think that's why they heavily pursued someone like Jimmy Garoppolo a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
No, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. The only thing
I think you bring up some good points, but I just think, Kyle Shanahan is good enough as an offensive mind to figure out how to use, one of the best quarterbacks in all football.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Lounis is a wizard. Lounis has been calling everything recently, so
shout out Trevor.
My
guy.
The only thing shout out Trevor. The only thing I'll add is a quick stat correction. Jimmy G was traded for a second-round pick. I don't know what kind of value he garners now from the 49ers, like what they could get for him. He's definitely someone that could potentially be traded. But you know what? We could talk about this all we want. Like, we don't actually know what's going to happen. We're not insiders. We are not the executives. So with that, let's just move on to our only other segment of today. We're going to, we're in the off season. So what we got to focus on is players that we have, players that we want. And so we picked, a few players that are controversial to many people in the Dynasty community. Some value them high, some value them low. We're going to talk about what we think about them. Should we buy, sell them, what we would pay for them, the maximum, the minimum. Starting off, we're going to go with the Saints' potential starting quarterback, someone that they paid a lot of money, Taysom Hill. And I think I'll throw this to Frank to start. What do you think about Taysom Hill?
So, if you're interested in Taysom Hill, we do have a Taysom Hill film analysis that I did a while back, where I watched 3 games, kind of showed what he's good and not good at. Right now, in my opinion, contrary to some of the reports that we've been hearing, I think that Taysom Hill is the favorite to be the starting quarterback in New Orleans, and I do think that he's a decent buy. I think that right now, the risk of him is not as priced in as the benefit. I think that right now, for a Taysom Hill owner, it would take a mid-second to pry him off his hands, and I think that is also the maximum price I would pay. In terms of the talent level of Taysom Hill, though, I think that people don't realize that Taysom Hill has the necessary arm strength to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. If someone tells you he doesn't, you can look at plenty of throws. There was one in particular on BYU that I showed during the analysis where he hit a guy 54, 55 yards in stride. Last time I checked, that's pretty damn far and good enough to be in the NFL. People are saying that Zach Wilson's got a great arm, where the farthest I've seen him throw the ball is only 60 yards, right? Only 60. He has a skill set that I think that fits Sean Payton's offense. I think that Sean Payton believes him. It's only a decent buy though, because while I do think he's the favorite, there's just way too much risk for me to realistically want to pay 205, 206 for this quarterback, especially when around there you might be able to land someone like Mac Jones, who I think I just like a whole lot more.
Yeah.
We're eating W's out here. It's all aboard the Jameis train. I want no part of Taysom Hill. I know people like him because of his rushing upside, and he played really well in those games that he filled in for Drew Brees. But I'm all aboard the Jameis train. Let him chuck the ball. Let him see what he can do in a Sean Payton offense. I really think that, Taysom Hill only got the nod mid-season because, Sean Payton has had more trust in him, more of a rapport with him. But if he got to see Jameis all this year, full offseason in Jameis if he resigns, which I think he will, I'm just all in on Jameis, so I don't really want any part of Taysom Hill here.
Yeah, I'm going to make mine short because I think Jake summed up my thoughts well. I think Jameis ends up beating him out in camp just because I think Jameis is a better pure quarterback than Taysom Hill. And I think Jake brought up a good point where they may have not wanted to throw Jameis into a situation where it's his first season in the offense in a shortened training camp. If I had Taysom Hill and I could get 205 for him, I would take that because it's just such a risk.
What's
to
your
hold
min
on to
sell?
him. Huh?
What's your minimum sell for Taysom Hill? If you were a Taysom owner, what's the minimum pick you would sell him for?
Second round. Any pick in the second round?
I was going to say late second. I would take any kind of second rounder for Taysom Hill.
Yeah, so my thought process on this is, and you kind of alluded to it, Frank, is I think Mac Jones will, in most Superflex leagues, Mac Jones will be available in like the middle of the second round. And I'd rather take the gamble on Mac Jones rather than go with Taysom Hill. Now where it gets interesting, though, is Kyle Trask, right? Because that's the only other real quarterback that is likely to go, top 3 rounds probably. What do you guys think? Late second round for Kyle Trask? Wherever he ends up, that's where I'd kind of be like, okay, I think I might rather have Taysom Hill. And when we talk about Superflex drafts, unless Lounis is in your league, Kyle Trask is probably ending up, probably getting passed on until early third, maybe late second, depending on situation. So with that in mind, I think a late second is what I'd sell Taysom Hill for. Though that's... So actually, though, thinking back, I think the minimum, if you could get me an early third, you can guarantee me 302, I think I'm going to be I'd rather just gamble on someone else. The max that I'm willing to pay for Taysom Hill is probably, if I'm really QB needy, I'd give up 2.6, 2.7 to get Taysom Hill.
JT, I really love that you brought up that point. Because now that I'm thinking about it, I think I actually am a little bit lower on Taysom Hill than I initially thought with that 205. Because thinking about it, it's okay, Kyle Trask or Taysom Hill. Kyle Trask, at the end of the day, is just a better pure passer than Taysom Hill is. The problem with Taysom Hill, and you can see this in the analysis I did, is that he's got one throw. He's got one throw, and that's it. He's got a fastball, and he needs a throwing lane. Kyle Trask is a pure thrower, has much more touch than I think Taysom Hill ever will. So, if Kyle Trask is on the board at 301, I think I'd just rather have Kyle Trask than Taysom Hill, even if Taysom Hill is in a good scenario. Taysom Hill, I'm very on and off with. For me, though, I'm not selling him for a late second. I'm not. That's the only thing. I just think that the minimum I would sell him for is 206, right? Is the shot at someone that I really like in Mac Jones, because I do think that Taysom Hill, because of how good of a rusher he is, and the fact that if he was on any other team but the Saints, I wouldn't like him, but he can run that Sean Payton system. We've seen it. The receivers, the skill sets that they have on that team just fit him.
Kyle Trask on the board at 301. The guy offers you 301 straight up for your Taysom Hill.
If I could take this, I just think so I'm the Taysom Hill owner in this situation, right? So I've said this
Correct.
before. Yeah, I've said this before on a different podcast. I don't remember which one, one of our episodes. But there's very overwhelming evidence that suggests that quarterbacks are most likely going to succeed when they're taken in the first half of the first round. You know, like pick 16 and up in the first round. That's where the overwhelming majority of NFL quarterbacks that are still in the league currently got drafted. That's not the case with NFL wide receivers. It is kind of the case with running backs, not obviously that early. But quarterbacks, it's so evident that they get drafted early, they get drafted often, and those are the guys that you want. When we're talking about Kyle Trask getting drafted into the late second, early third kind of round area, that does give me pause about Kyle Trask. It makes me, hesitate and wonder about his NFL success, because if teams are waiting that long to go and draft him, they're not as tied to him. If he doesn't succeed, they'll be quick to cut bait. It's just something that I'd be worried about. And at that point, like, I have seen Taysom Hill play. I've seen him actually play well, have fantasy productive days, win games for the Saints. And in that case, I'm keeping Taysom Hill. All right, if there's nothing else to add on that, we can move on to our next guy. Let's see. I will throw this one to Jake. Jake, we got someone who's just... I don't have any other words than you like that. Kirk Cousins. Where you got him?
Where do I got him? I have him as a underrated QB2 in a Superflex league. I think Kirk Cousins gets slept on all the time just because he's not flashy. He doesn't run the football. But at the end of the day, he usually finishes in that, QB 10 to 15 range. And that's what he is. And I think he's a very solid player. Is he worth a first-round pick to a QB-needy team? Probably. Is it something I'd be really wanting to do? No. But I think if you can get, my personal max price that I would buy Kirk Cousins at is 2 second-round picks. I think that's fair in a Superflex league. Obviously, in a non-Superflex, I wouldn't even come close to that.
Yeah, I will say, for as much hate as Kirk Cousins gets, he's been like a good QB too. Like, he gets a lot of slack a lot of years because, like, especially like I feel the real life perception of him makes him underrated in fantasy. I think that's what kind of hurts him, because people just know him for choking in primetime games, never really being in that elite level. But fantasy wise, he hasn't been bad. So I think Jake summed it up well on the value, and I think he's someone where, I don't know, he's kind of, especially in startup drafts, I feel like he's kind of underrated. Like, he goes pretty low in Superflex startup drafts, where he's someone we could get a good QB2 who's going to be a starter for the next few years. And so that's my opinion on him. I think that'd be the first thing that come to mind, is like being able to kind of steal him in some startups at Superflex.
Yeah, so just for some reference, since Kirk Cousins has taken over the starting job in Washington and then since moved to Minnesota, he's finished QB 10, QB 5, QB 6, QB 13, QB 19, QB 11 less this past season. So that like I said, I think at this point in his career, he's just an established QB2, and that's just what he is. And people think he's finished, but I think he's still got a few good years left at this production.
Let me ask you guys a question, right? I'll give you a scenario. You're a championship team. You just won the championship, but you won it on the backs of, I don't know, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, right? You've got two aging quarterbacks, and you know that you're going to have to go out and get a quarterback. You're picking 112. We're in a 12-team league. You're picking 112, and Mac Jones is on the board, but you get an offer for Kirk Cousins straight up. Are you picking Mac Jones, or are you trading that pick for Kirk Cousins?
That's a good question.
I'm taking Mac Jones.
Well, Frank loves Mac Jones, so obviously he's taking Mac Jones.
The only thing that makes me hesitate, if I wasn't a contender, it's definitely Mac Jones. But as you just said, like, it's someone who just won the chip, which means he already has a championship-ready roster. And I feel like Kirk would give you the best chance to win in the next season or two.
Yep.
Realistically, what I'm doing is I'm taking just the best skill player on the board and then trading for an aging quarterback. Because I think that for me personally, Kirk Cousins is not the kind of player that I want to buy with draft capital. He's the kind of player that I would, if I desperately need quarterbacks, I'd rather trade, running backs or receivers on my roster for him, and also just kind of play the market with other quarterbacks in that general area. Let's just say Jimmy G, for example. I think that Jimmy G might be a better buy for his price because while you may not get that upside of production, unless you desperately need a QB2. If you literally do not have a QB2, that's a different story. Yeah, take Kirk Cousins if you're a contending team. But I'm just going out here and assuming that if you won the championship, you had more than... You at least have a couple questionable guys at quarterback too, right? Like, in that example, you said we had Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. I at least know they're playing. So I'm not going to take the risk of Kirk Cousins. I'd rather have the upside of Mac Jones.
Yeah, I also think that helps turn around your QB room a little bit. You get the rookie come in, you get some youth, and you're not tied now to a 43-year-old quarterback, a 37-year-old quarterback, and now a 33-year-old Kirk Cousins. It gives some youth to your team there, which is always a good thing.
Are any of you low on Mac Jones?
I'm not low on him. I'm just not as high on him as you are.
Yeah, I think you're a little higher than all of us are, but I respect what he's done. I think he's a talented quarterback, and I just have him behind the likes of Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and Wilson. So that's the issue in this draft, is that it's a QB heavy draft for Mac.
Yeah, I think that's the main difference, because I think you view Mac Jones as kind of like a not very far behind fifth, versus I view it as like a tier break after the QB4. Before
I was just wondering, because I know we're a Trey Lance podcast. I thought maybe we were starting to swing to also being a Trey Lance Mac Jones podcast.
Well, as long as you don't take the Trey Lance part out, I think we're good.
This is kind of, I'm not sure how many Dynasty listeners also listen to Pardon My Take, their sports podcast, Barstool Sports, but they were talking about, becoming a Trey Lance podcast. And I just got to say, Pardon My Take.
Wow.
Stay off our turf. This is our thing. You can have everything else. Yeah, this is our thing, though. You can have literally everything else. This is ours.
We got to get him on here before he goes on Pardon My Take.
I mean, sure. If we could get him, we could get him. I think we got to pivot now. But I'm iffy on Mac Jones. I want to see where he gets drafted, because I think a lot of that will have to do with situation and where he ends up for me. Moving on, though. Next guy in our discussion. This one I'm throwing to Lounis because he owns him. He's also on the team that he's a fan of. That's Miles Sanders. What are we feeling about Miles Sanders, Lounis?
I thought if I didn't own him, I'd kind of be trying to buy him, because he kind of came off a very unconventional season. He was injured for he was injured for a stretch of it in the middle. The entire offense was a mess. The O-line was just decimated by injuries. And we kind of saw him come back to life at the end of the season with Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen Hurts being the starter is a plus towards Miles Sanders, because defenses have to watch out for the quarterback running now. I think they're going to depend on him more and not put as much pressure on Jalen Hurts as they did with Carson Wentz with having to carry. I think the new coach, Sirianni, would kind of put him in that JT role. And also just off the fact that the O-line starters that they're getting back, I think will automatically kind of make things easier for him. Like, Lane Johnson will be back and healthy. Jason Kelsey's not retiring, which was a fear. Brandon Brooks, who's one of the best guards in football, will be back. Dillard will also be back at the right tackle spot. I think he's, like, if I didn't own him and the owner was kind of low on him from last season, I would try to buy him.
What's the price?
Well, what's your max price?
Yeah, what's the price you're willing to spend to get Miles Sanders?
That is a good question. I'm trying to think if he was in the first round in this draft, or am I taking him?
Would you trade pick 103 for him?
No.
I don't think 103 that high.
How about this? Would you rather have him or Najee Harris?
I would rather Miles Sanders than any of the rookie running backs.
I agree with that. Do any of you disagree with that one? Jake seems to be shaking.
I'd rather have Javonte Williams.
I disagree with that.
Miles Sanders has just proven it to me kind of a more, and I do think those guys will be good, but I actually kind of like Miles Sanders' situation next year between the coaching staff, Jalen Hurts is his QB running zone reads a lot, and the O-line being back healthy. And I think they're not going to put a ton of pressure on Hurts. I like the situation he's in for next year.
I mean, I think that Miles Sanders kind of falls into this Joe Mixon paradox, guys. I'm not going to lie. I think he's this guy that everyone's like, oh, he's going to be good. Oh, he's going to be good. And he's just okay.
Well,
obviously.
Let me cut you off right there. Would you trade Joe Mixon straight up 1-for-1 for Miles Sanders?
No, I'd keep Joe Mixon.
And Lounis, I doubt you'd go the other way, right? Would you trade Miles Sanders 1-for-1 with Joe Mixon?
No, I'm keeping Sanders. We should have a bet on Sanders versus Mixon for next season.
We got to hold ourselves accountable.
Yes.
We should have
There
a
will be an
right,
accountability podcast.
That's right, boys.
Let's do it. We'll think of something to wager.
I think a nice podcast.
We'll make it something we have to do on this podcast, depending on who finishes better next season, with Sanders versus Mixon.
Implementing podcast bets is actually something that, yes, we should definitely do going forward. And you know what? This podcast is going to hold ourselves accountable. We all have a lot of, kind of spicy takes. We're going to throw them out there. We'll have another primer again. We'll go back and look at it. Just something to look at. Frank, do you got anything else you want to add on Miles Sanders? Are you giving up pick 105 for Miles Sanders?
No, but I probably would put Miles Sanders around, like, literally 1 or 2 picks back, just because I think, so I'd rather have, see, the problem with Miles Sanders is I think I'd rather have a lot of the quarterbacks, but I would take him over Najee and Etienne. Obviously, this is before landing spot, so that might change things a little bit for me. But as of right now, I'm kind of in the Lounis camp. I think that Miles Sanders, if you can get him at that late first price, I don't think you're going to be able to, because I think he's one of those guys that is always going to fall in this offseason into the owners higher on him, especially if you were in a startup last year where an owner took him in the early second of a startup. They're not just going to give up on him after one season. But I agree with Lounis. If you get an owner that views him as someone to fade, I think he's a resounding buy. We've seen the talent. Just looking at it, he is like one of the only players that Howie Roseman actually hit on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, so
is that a good thing, or is that a lucky thing?
He's an anomaly. He broke the curse. That's how good he is.
Yeah. But I'm in the Lounis camp. I think that Miles Sanders is a decent buy, maybe not for his price. I think that I'd pin him at around 107 right now, because I'd rather have the top 2 receivers, Javonte Williams, at least 2 of the quarterbacks, I'd imagine. So then we start getting into the conversation. Okay, QB3, let's see where Najee Harris and Etienne land. So I think that he's right around there.
I have him around pick 9. I think that's the highest I'd go. Just because probably pick 10. I'd have him behind the 4 quarterbacks, Devontae Smith, and Jamar Chase, and probably the 2 running backs in Etienne and Harris, and probably even Javonte Williams. So I have him in that later half of the first round, 10, 11 in there.
You guys are low on Miles Sanders. I
have
him in the.
I'm higher. Yeah.
Well, more so Jake than Frank. I'm kind of more in the Frank camp of. I'd trade about 107. 107, I think, is what I'd give up for him if I needed a running back. Other than that, it gets iffy. I definitely think he's better than any of the. Javonte Williams is the only one I have questions on, because I'm not, I don't know what to think yet about Javonte Williams, if I love him or not. But I would definitely take Miles Sanders over Etienne and Najee Harris. But with that, let's move on. I'll jump on this one, I guess, because I haven't really taken anyone yet. CEH. Now, the issue with CEH is, and I think it's been an issue with a lot of other people before too, a lot of other players, right? So he got hyped up a ton, kind of unforeseen amount of hype, where I've said it before on this podcast, he was getting drafted in the first round of startup drafts, with very little in like, other than, he's on the Chiefs, like, let's take him in the first. He had a great game in the start against the Texans, and then since then hasn't really, he produced some decent games, but didn't really show as much as the likes of Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, obviously James Robinson. So he's behind on those guys. But with that, people are, they're starting to say, like, oh, now's a good time to go out and buy Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And when consensus starts getting like that, I like to do the opposite and be like, I'm still going to just be out on CEH. Like, I'm just not going to go out and buy him. And with that, like, if I was a CEH owner, that's something I want to focus on now. What's the minimum I'd be willing to give up for him? Because I'm looking to sell him. So he was probably drafted in your Superflex League in around the top, 4 or 5 picks. Probably behind Burrow, behind Tua, maybe behind Taylor. And then CH is right there, most likely. Obviously, he hasn't performed up to that talent, up to that, kind of value. So then you got to ask yourself, like, what are other people willing to pay? I've said before, I like most of these guys over most of the 2020 running backs over any of the 2021 running backs. But there are some wide receivers that I like from this class that I'm willing to go out and cash out on CEH and then just invest in one of these other wide receivers like a Bateman. And so I'd feel comfortable selling CEH for about pick 108, 109. That's around the minimum I'd be willing to spend. And this might be a little crazy. I don't know. You guys might crucify me for this. But I'd give up 111 in a Superflex League. Or I'd take 111 in a Superflex League and send away CEH. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
It's close. I'd probably go around 109, maybe 110, but probably around 109 I'd like. Just because he was, before he got hurt and before Le'Veon Bell signed, I believe he was around, like, it was a really low-end RB1 or, like, one of the top RB2s. I want to say he was, like, 11 or 12.
He was RB8 for a little while. Yeah, he was RB around 8 for a little while. Most of that coming off his big game against the Texans. But, yeah, he was up that high. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So I do value him for that. When you mentioned, like, kind of, like, is he a buy? Because he's kind of somewhere in that weird predicament where you could probably get him at good value in a startup draft. But in terms of buying someone who, as you mentioned, he got so much draft hype last year, someone probably took him 1 through 3 in the rookie drafts last summer. I don't think they're going to be willing to just kind of give up on him after a year, especially when, like, he got injured and they brought in Le'Veon Bell and he started off strong. So he's somewhere kind of in that predicament. Where in a startup you could get good value for him, but I don't think you're going to be able to trade for him easily. But I would probably, to answer your question overall, I'd probably say 109.
Yeah, I have him similarly valued to Miles Sanders. So I think he's around what I said before, 109 to 111 range.
Man, I guess I'm a lot higher on Edwards-Helaire because, well, like Jake, in my rankings right now, I have him one spot ahead of Miles Sanders in the same tier 4 of running backs. I have it categorized RB2 with RB1 potential or a low-end RB1 with question marks. I think that's a perfect category for Edwards-Helaire, and I'd probably value him. I put Miles Sanders at 107. I'm firmly, I think, 106, 105 for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'd rather have top 2 QBs, top 2 receivers, and Javonte. That puts him, I'd firmly have him right now over Najee Harris. Once again, if Najee Harris goes, say, like, pick 20 in the draft, then that's definitely going to shoot him up. But Edwards-Helaire, I think that I saw exactly what I was expecting out of him. He's a guy that, coming out, I wanted to see if he could improve in his runs in between the guards, mainly on inside zone and duo concepts, especially off these RPOs. He got off to a hot start against the league's worst run defense and was not able to improve. Still a rookie. We saw everything else that he was able to offer. He's extremely shifty. He's a dynamic running back. I think that his role is still going to increase. And I think that we saw that during the Super Bowl, his role needed to be increased because they weren't really able to move the ball by just throwing the ball every play. So I still like Edwards-Helaire. I'm not selling low on him. My min sell for Edwards-Helaire is probably like 104, 105. I want to have a shot at one of the top receivers, QB2, or Javonte Williams if I'm selling him.
If 104... Hold on, sorry, 1 second, Jake. If 104 or 105 is like your min sell, what's your max buy? Like, what are you willing to give up to go out and get CEH?
106. Probably right around there.
How does that work? Like, if you're willing to sell him for 104 or 105, you're only willing to give up 106 for him?
Well, like, no. Yeah, there's like... If I have him, I'm not selling him for 106, but if I'm buying him, I'm buying... I don't know if I mixed that up or not. Maybe I did. But basically, if I'm selling him, I want at minimum 105. If I'm buying him, I'm probably not giving up 105 to get him just because right now I have Javonte graded higher and the receivers graded higher. I haven't got around to the quarterbacks, but I can imagine with all the hype around it, that Trevor Lawrence and another quarterback is going to be above him as well.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was looking for. What are you going to say, Jake? Did you have something else to add?
Yeah, just one quick note. Obviously, Damian Williams is expected back with the Chiefs next year. He opted out this year due to COVID. I do expect Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be the starting running back for the Chiefs. Don't make any mistake about it. But I do think that Damian Williams is a better backup than Darrell Williams or even a washed-up Le'Veon Bell at this point. So I do think they're going to split more than some may think.
It's a good point. Good point. But with that, let's move on to our next guy. Frank, I'll throw him to you. Michael Thomas of the New Orleans Saints. What do you got about Michael Thomas?
You know, Michael Thomas, the big thing that is tough to gauge is the whole character thing. Because, you know, the Saints DBs, best trash talkers in the league, were obviously able to get to Michael Thomas as he socked Chauncey Gardner-Johnson during the season to get suspended. He had the injury concerns. The talent's there. People will bring into question his age. If I'm a Michael Thomas owner, I don't think that impacts me too much as long as my team isn't completely out of the playoff race. So, to sum it up, my max buy for Michael Thomas would probably be wherever Waddle and Bateman are going. I think that's my max buy.
Okay.
Maybe the Etienne pick.
I'm glad you mentioned those names because that's right around where I'm probably hit the highest person on Bateman in this group. So I think I'd rather have Bateman than Thomas, but I'd rather have Thomas than Waddle. And so I just kind of sandwich him in between them. Yeah, because I still think Thomas, you know, like, call him slant boy, call him whatever. He's still an elite wide receiver talent.
Is Bateman your wide receiver 2 right now in prospects?
Yeah, Bateman's Chase 1, Bateman 2, Waddle 3. Sorry, Devontae Smith people. Yeah, that's about where I have him, sandwiched in between those guys. So, does that come out to be in a Superflex draft? Like, who knows where the quarterbacks are kind of going to go? They could really screw things up depending on your leagues. But right around 108 is probably where I'd give up for Michael Thomas. 108 is, I think, what I'd be willing to move for Michael Thomas. What do you guys think?
I think that's right value. I have it the flip where I'd probably lean Waddle but take him over Bateman. But I respect your take. What was it? I'd probably have it around that pick. But I do think there are legit concerns with him. I don't know what was up with him this year, honestly. We brought up the practice stuff that happened where he just punched one of his teammates in the face. Obviously, this I'm not like being like, oh, because of this he's gonna be bad next year, but it was kind of weird that he didn't have a single catch in that playoff game, against Tampa Bay. I don't know. It's kind of, it was a weird season for him, and interesting to see how much as like a young player he's dropped in value in 1 year. Because before this season, we were talking about is he like the dynasty wide receiver 1. If you didn't have him at 1, he was definitely in that conversation, like in the top 3. So I don't know. It'll be interesting if you're banking on maybe if Jameis is starting next year, does that help him? That's actually another point I wanted to bring up. What do you think is the most ideal quarterback outcome for Michael Thomas? Do you think it's Taysom Hill, where there might design slants to the number 1 receiver more often because he's more limited as a passer? Do you think it's Jameis because he's willing to sling it more? Do you think it's maybe a rookie quarterback? Maybe they trade up for Mac Jones?
Michael Thomas is the perfect receiver for Taysom Hill. And it's not just because Taysom Hill can only throw slants. It's because Taysom Hill's best throws are... I assume that Taysom Hill has a baseball background because he looks like he's a shortstop out there. He wants a nice clean throwing lane, a nice space for his feet to crow hop into it, and he wants to throw that ball on a line. He doesn't want to have to do a throw over a linebacker under a safety. He doesn't want to have to throw a ball into space where a safety's driving down on the ball. He wants to say, hey, Michael Thomas, run a dig, run a curl, a slant, which Michael Thomas is perfect at. So I can understand why people would assume that it would be Jameis Winston, and I can understand why they may prefer Jameis Winston just because Jameis Winston's a better passer of the football. But I think that Michael Thomas, we saw what he was able to do with Taysom Hill, and I think that in terms of a receiver 1 that would really fit Taysom Hill, it would be exactly Michael Thomas. I just think the problem with Michael Thomas is it just really feels like the cliff has come for him, that we're never going to see that same year he had again. I was never huge on Michael Thomas, but I respected him. I would legitimately be shocked if he puts up anywhere near the numbers he had that season he had 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm really glad that Frank said that because I thought what I was going to say was going to be just a flaming hot take, but I don't think I would give up any first-round pick for Michael Thomas right now.
Damn.
Between the character issues of, punching his own teammate in practice, between not playing this year with injury, between the uncertainty of the New Orleans quarterback situation, and the fact that he's going to be entering his age 28 season coming up, which is generally receivers you tend to fall off around 30, so he probably only has a few years left at this level, and I just don't think he's ever really going to be as good as he was 2 years ago, like Frank said, and heading into this year where everyone had him as a top 3 wide receiver in Dynasty. I just don't think he's ever going to be even close to that.
Okay, but counterpoint to that, and I'm honestly not the biggest Michael Thomas fan, but prior to this year, he was a top 10 wide receiver every single year. And I get if you guys think he's going to have a huge drop-off, right? But where we're talking about is, where I said at least was somewhere between Bateman and Waddle, and Luna said Waddle and Bateman. And, there's only 12 wide receiver 1s on the year. Do you guys, believe Waddle and Bateman can end up being wide receiver 1s? Even if Michael Thomas has a huge drop-off and is, a middle wide receiver 2, I don't know where Bateman and Waddle are going to end up in that regard. And we're saying 28, but I still feel like Michael Thomas has at least 3 solid years, and if I could get 3 solid years of, at minimum mid-wide receiver 2 production, I'd just rather have the first.
I said that I'd have him over. I'd take him over Waddle. I'd take him over Bateman. Now, if we're talking about, but the thing is, we're talking about Michael Thomas. This is a guy that was the undoubted wide receiver 1 two seasons ago, which was not that long ago. I think the problem for me is that I can understand why people would really like to buy him off of the talent. I'm just personally not buying him. Maybe if I could for 111, but what Michael Thomas owner is going to sell him for 111? You would have to be Jake and really hate his outlook to sell him at 111. I think he's a resounding hold, and my minimum sell is is probably 107, 106. I'm not going to sell him for a really back half of the draft first round pick. He could easily turn it around. I mean, I say his character concerns. I've never had a conversation with him. He's not. I'm too scarred by AB. I'm not buying a receiver like that that's overpaid, that did nothing last year. The Saints are in cap hell. He just really too many red flags for me to buy.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's too many red flags for me to buy. And to your point, JT, like where you're comparing them to a Waddle or a Bateman, the thing is, like, sure, maybe they never reached the peak that Michael Thomas had 2 years ago, but you could get 10 seasons of a guy at a wide receiver 2 versus 3 seasons at a wide receiver 2 of Michael Thomas, and that's just more value.
I think Jake's convincing me more and more on kind of being lower on him. I think Jake's brought up a lot of points. I might have to lower mine from I will go like 111, 112 range. I don't know if I'll go completely out of the first round, but definitely outside of the top 10.
Even there, like I've talked about this before, those receivers in that first half of the second round of a lot of rookie drafts, the Tylan Wallaces and the Elijah Moores and all these guys, they're also guys that I like. And if you could trade Michael Thomas and get 2 of those guys, maybe, I just think it's a no-brainer in my opinion.
No, dude, because the thing is for me, what Bateman's comp is Michael Thomas. What do you want Bateman to become? You want him to become Michael Thomas.
But a younger one. Without character concerns.
The talent is not a question of Michael Thomas. I think he could be an amazing buy, and if I was able to get past these red flags, I would love Michael Thomas as a buy, and I actually think he's way more of a buy right now than a sell. It's just me personally, I cannot buy him. I'm too scarred from AB. I'm not doing it. It's just no bueno for me.
Right. So you said that the comp for Bateman is Michael Thomas. So if you can get even 75%, let's say, of Michael Thomas in Bateman for 10 years compared to what Michael Thomas is now for 3 years, which is more valuable?
I think we're just selling Michael Thomas really short at this point. Like,
yeah, I think that's selling him way too short.
Yeah, the man's been like, other than this year in which he was injured and we had Drew Brees with cracked ribs or whatever the hell he had, like Michael Thomas has been wide receiver 1 for like 5 straight years. With what, Jake?
With Drew Brees. We've literally never seen him produce without Drew Brees, and that is what's going to be happening moving forward.
Yeah, but I'm not selling Michael. My minimum sell for Michael Thomas is not a bottom half of the draft first round pick. I still, if I'm a Michael Thomas owner, I'm just going to deal with whatever happens, right? Unless I need to rebuild, and even then, okay, if I need to rebuild and I need to get rid of him, I'm going to really try to get 108, 109, and if I can't get that, I'm going to say fuck the rookie picks. I'll just sell him for players, because JT's right. This guy is still legit. He missed a lot of the season from injury. He played well with Taysom Hill. There are plenty of things you can buy into.
Yeah. We'll move on after this. For me, my max buy, it gets tough because the only wide receiver prospect that I really think does have like a much better outlook is Jamar Chase. And where is he getting drafted? He's probably getting drafted around 106, 105, I don't know, maybe 104. So I guess 106, I'll say, assuming Chase is gone by then, is what I'd give up for Michael Thomas. I know I said I'd rather have Rashad Bateman over him. I think I might have changed my mind while we were talking about it just because I've seen what people have been saying. With that, they're probably even for me. So wherever Rashad Bateman's getting drafted is probably wherever I'm willing to value Michael Thomas. I'm not selling him if I have him for anything lower than probably 108 or 109. I know that's only like 3 draft pick difference, but I mean that's just a very tight range of where I've got Michael Thomas. Moving on. Let's see. I'll throw this one to Lounis because he owns him in our league. Someone with a very disappointing season so far, but looking to bounce back, that's Henry Ruggs. What do we got on Henry Ruggs, Lounis?
Okay, so Ruggs, obviously, I have kind of crazy expectations to start of the year with him getting drafted ahead of CD Lamb and Jerry Jeudy. That's obviously not Ruggs' fault, but I think we kind of all were confused at that decision on draft night, and it kind of not exactly how we thought it should go, but CD Lamb and Jeudy especially CD Lamb had a much better season. With Ruggs, it's interesting because he for stretches of games would just like disappear. Well, not like fully as much disappear, but he was used as a decoy a ton. Like he's one of those players that is more useful in real life than he would be in fantasy, because he would draw safety coverage a ton of times. He would draw attention running deep and free things open up things to free Aguilar and Waller. But then occasionally you'd have these plays where he looks insanely impressive and almost like Tyreek Hill-esque, where like he caught the contested catch over a corner 40 yards downfield against Atlanta, or him torching Kansas City the first time they played. I'm not even going to count that Jets touchdown. That's more of a fuck up by the Jets than even just him. He just ran in the street.
What do you mean? Blitzing? That's what you're supposed to do at the last play of the game. You're supposed to blitz everyone.
Yeah, like it's like,
Dr. Heat's got to bring the heat. That's what he does.
Like it's like, yeah, all they need is a touchdown, so let's leave the fastest player on the field one-on-one with a corner. With
Lamar Jackson.
I don't know.
I think Lamar Jackson, the quarterback, had a better chance of guarding him.
Probably. That's actually a very good point.
Probably.
It's because he can keep up with him more. But the flashes did show me enough where I have hope for him. In terms of a minimum sell, what would I want as a Ruggs owner? Again, it's different with as an owner, what would I sell for versus what I would expect someone to pay for him? Because I think he's a hold in general. Like, I don't know if I would say he's a buy or I would list him as a hold. I'd probably want a really early second for him. Somewhere between like 201, 203. Because he got taken most drafts last year at the end of the first round. Probably around like 108 to 111 range. You saw the flashes of him breaking out here and there. Both rookie receivers on the Raiders kind of struggled. And it might be a complicated offense to learn, a shortened season. And he just showed enough flashes to where it's hard to sell him for less than an early second. But at the same time, I'm not expecting someone to like necessarily be running on my door to pay that price. So I think he's a hold at this point if anyone owns him, and hoping that another year in the NFL, he can learn how to create more separation to where he's not just being used as a decoy as often.
All right, Lounis, let me ask you this real quick. I'll hit you with two guys, right? Yeah. So someone's on the clock, they're picking, and they have pick 205, right? And I'll give you two different scenarios, and you let me know for each. Kadarius Toney's on the board at 205. Are you trading Ruggs for 205 and snagging Kadarius Toney?
I love Toney, but I'd keep Ruggs at that point.
Okay. How about Terrace Marshall's on the board, same spot?
If he has a really, really good fit, maybe, but I don't think so.
Okay, so
I'd rather stick with Ruggs. You got to realize NFL Ruggs, GMs. He was a top 20 talent. You can argue he shouldn't have gone maybe 13, but a lot of teams had him as like a top, maybe not top 20, but top 25 guy in last year's draft. And I think there's a lot more potential to be tapped into with using him in different ways. I don't think they got the ball in his hands enough. I don't think they ran like enough slants and screens with him. They just kind of sent him deep most plays. So I'll take the chance on Ruggs because I think he's more physically talented. I want to hear what Jake and Frank think also.
I have him pretty much exactly where you did. I have him around 201 to 203. I would love to get one of those, receivers that just fall out of the first round. I think it's, like I said, when we were talking about Michael Thomas, I think it's a great spot this year to draft wide receivers. I think there's going to be a lot of talented ones still on the board. I do agree with you saying Ruggs was definitely a top 25 talent in last year's draft. He was drafted that high for a reason, obviously overdrafted by the Raiders just because they fell in love with that speed. But overall, I would still want a very quality wide receiver back in return, and I think I can get that in this early second round this year, as is a better draft than last year.
I think I still have him in the same spot I had him last year. I'm thinking it out in my head. Yeah, I think I'd have him at like 203, which is the same draft pick 203, 204 where I had him last year. I think that of all the people here, I probably had the most tempered expectations of Ruggs. I basically liked every single receiver not named Laviska Shenault over him. I still do. But
what do you got against Laviska?
The only thing that concerned me about
Shenault
was injury.
He's just
Future Trevor Lawrence #1 right there.
I don't care. But in terms of Ruggs, like, I don't know why everyone has been so quick to give up on him and call him a bust. As a basically a Raiders fan last year, I actually thought he had a pretty damn good year. He had to deal with a lot of injuries, which for a guy who relies on his speed really kind of hinders you and your competitive advantage that you had coming into the league. Like Lounis said, the games that he was involved in, I mean, he did exactly what he was supposed to do and made the plays exactly when he needed to make them. So I don't really think that my valuation of Henry Ruggs has gone down at all. We just, like I thought last year, he's a guy that we need to see some development out of. He didn't have a crazy good route tree coming out. I think that, like Lounis said, not only do the Raiders need to get the ball in his hands more, we need to see him be better with the ball in his hands, especially not down the field, before the line of scrimmage, because I think that's an area that he did struggle with at Bama, was that with the ball in his hands, he was great down the field, but before the line of scrimmage, when people can actually react to where he is in the field, I don't think he was very good enough. He was not very good and was not good enough. Needs to get better in the NFL. But like Lounis said, I think he's a hold. Nothing crazy. 203, 204 valuation.
So it seems like I might be the lowest on Ruggs then. I'll take him over Tony, but I just think that this is a very, very good wide receiver class, and one that I like a lot. So I would probably sell him for like 208. Because the guys that I'd take over him include like Terrace Marshall, Diami Brown, Elijah Moore, and then right around there is probably where I'd cut it off with players. I'm assuming Rondale Moore is obviously very, very, very much gone too, but just gotta toss his name in there and make sure people know we're not, neglecting him. So 208 is probably where I'm going to give up Ruggs, because I just think those other guys do have a chance to, flash in their first year in the league and make more of an impact. And with that, like, so if Ruggs plays really well this year and has a very solid season, like, he's still not going to be worth as much as a rookie who flashes. Like, I don't have any specific examples that come to mind, because there weren't many second-year wide receivers that kind of proved themselves this year. But, the likes of T. Higgins is going to improve their stock a lot more than the likes of
DK Metcalf?
Oh, well, DK was already coming on at the... DK was already valued really high by the end of the year. I mean, not
maybe
crazy
Deontay,
high.
but Deontay was valued pretty highly coming into the season as well.
Yeah, but like, pretend like rest in peace, like JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
JJ Arcega-Whiteside didn't do it for you.
And pretend like him.
How could you bring up this lawn chair again?
No, pretend him or N'Keal Harry, like, instead of having a bad year, like, boom, like N'Keal Harry has like 8 touchdowns and 950 yards with the Patriots. Like, let's imagine a world where that happened, right? I still don't think he'd be valued as high as T. I know. I just don't think he's getting as highly valued as T. Higgins still. So if you could get that wide receiver that booms in the second round, I just think you're getting more value there. I don't know. Do you guys have any last minute thoughts, or are we ready to wrap it up with our last guy? All right, let's wrap it up. The last guy, I'll toss this one to Frank. Kind of a disappointing season, a down year, if you will. I mean, he still finished pretty highly in his position group, and that's Baltimore Ravens tight end Mark Andrews. Frank, what are we doing with Mark Andrews?
We are diamond hands holding Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is a guy that I really loved in college and in that Oklahoma offense, and I thought coming in year one, he was a perfect fit for the Ravens scheme. That they were going to run a lot of the same passing concepts for tight ends. And, I mean, it ended up becoming true for us Mark Andrews believers. And to me, he's like, you're just never going to get the right price to give him up realistically. Unless the stars align, I really don't see myself getting an offer where I feel very comfortable giving up on Mark Andrews. Maybe that was last year and I missed the window. But for me, Mark Andrews is a firm hold. Minimum sell would be somewhere in the late first round, which may be a little greedy, but I think I'd still have Mark Andrews over a decent amount of the receivers coming out this year. I think that almost the line is like, I'd much rather have Rondale Moore, and he's right around Bateman. Like, I'd probably go back and forth a lot, because right now Bateman's my wide receiver. I'd go back and forth on whether or not I'd rather have Andrews or Bateman. Maybe because we play tight end premium, I'd rather have Andrews, but
I was going to say, we should specify our league is tight end premium. It's not just only Superflex, yeah.
And at the same time, I can see a lot of the reasons why you wouldn't want to buy him. He has, like, one of the diabetes that, like, is annoying, so that's a big reason why he can't see 90% of the snaps at tight end, is that he needs to come out and get, like, his finger pricked, like, 40-something times a game. Which, I mean, it sucks, but it does hinder his value. And the other thing that I think is a little bit concerning for Mark Andrews is just that if you look at the Ravens' offense last year, their number one problem was that they just didn't really have great receivers. So whenever that's the case, it's always tough to be like, hey, why don't you go buy one of the guys that was not performing up to what he needed to last year?
Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead,
if
Jake.
you listen to the pod, if anyone's listened to the pod, we all know how
sell
I
the
feel.
Ravens, sell the Ravens.
And Jake did it.
Yep.
He's a man of his word.
I did it. I'm a man of my word. I traded away Lamar Jackson today, actually. Got a good deal. Got some Tua, got some Mixon, Preston Williams, and some picks. But, you know, a lot of people won't like that, but I think it's buying low on Tua and Mixon here, so I don't mind it. But back to Mark Andrews. I just think, like Frank said, to go out and buy a Ravens player, that team is going to be based around the run always, and they're going to run Lamar Jackson, they're going to run J.K. Dobbins, and they're going to run Gus Edwards even a few times a game. They're just going to run the ball, and obviously that leaves him open for play action, which is why he was so successful a few years ago. But their receiving play was just so bad. I think they're going to go out and they're going to get a receiving threat in this year's draft, whether it's I don't know who's going to be available at their end of the first round, probably a Rondale Moore or a Bateman, a type like that. And I just think that's going to force the ball to be even spread a few targets even thinner. So I'm just all out on this Ravens passing attack. So that's about it.
What would you pay for Mark Andrews? Or what would you sell him? Whichever one you want.
So I think, like Frank said, Mark Andrews is going to have to be a hold. I don't think anyone's really going to pay a price that I'm willing to sell at just because of his potential. If I would get an offer, I would be more than happy to sell him just because, like, all the reasons I just said. But I would be looking for probably early second and another pick.
What about if you were offered, as a Mark Andrews owner, a 2022 first from a contending team?
I'm accepting that. Easy.
I'm rejecting. I'd rather try and get a first in this year's draft. Any first. I don't think I'd sell him for less than a first in this year's draft. But when we were talking 2022, there's a time aspect to it where I don't want to have to wait another year for a pick. There's the aspect of, Frank, you mentioned it's a contender, so you know it's going to be a later pick. I think it's kind of well documented that this upcoming class, as in 2022, is most likely not going to be as strong as 2021 and, like, definitely not as strong as 2020. So with that, I'm probably rejecting that kind of offer.
What was I gonna say? So if you got offered in this draft, they'll say 202 or 203. I mean, if you got offered 202 or 203, you're saying no?
Me, I'm saying no. Yeah, when we're talking about the tight end position and how hard it is to have a top tier talent, and while Mark Andrews might be, kind of on the end of that tier, like he's still in that tier of no matter how you cut it, he's probably tight end 5, 6 in that range. They're just so hard to come by, and when you're talking like tight end 6 to tight end 8, tight end 10, that's such a huge jump that I think the security that you have with him is something that is kind of not valued enough, and it's kind of like baked into his price for me. So with that, 110 is probably where I'd sell him around. And for the viewers, right, we're talking in terms of draft picks because it's just easier because it's a known commodity, and they all have like 109 is obviously valued more than 110. Like if we start talking in terms of like players and whatnot, like everyone values players very differently. So it gets a little too complicated if we start breaking down everything in terms of players. I know people kind of would love to hear that, and maybe we'll be open to kind of doing more of that in the future. But right now, it's just much more simple to do it this way.
Anyone who'd rather us do players with the draft picks, just comment on our video saying what draft pick do you think this player is worth, and we'll give you an answer.
Actually, I think that might be a good place to just end it. Give us a like, subscribe, comment. We're going to want to get to your questions. If you have any questions, we're going to do episodes on listener questions. There's a lot of good stuff coming up soon. So with that, I think it's a good time to end the 3rd and 20 Dynasty episode. Thank you guys, and see you.
Bye guys.
Peace,
Thank
guys.
you.